Welcome to a Media Day edition of the Hornets on SI podcast. This is Inside the Hive. We are back for second week. Sam, the NBA season is officially underway. Media Day is in the books. It is done. From tomorrow, Hornets are in training camp up at Duke. Things are happening. The NBA is coming back. This really feels like the officially start of the new season, right?
Oh man, like it doesn't hit until you see the guys in the uniform again. And it kind of just it's been a long time since we've seen these guys wearing Hornets uniforms. So it feels good. I know we're like in the middle of like football season, but it's like, yeah, like basketball's just knocking at the door, and it's a good time. It's a good time to be in Charlotte.
Yeah, and we have no shortage of things to discuss today. We're going to be talking about the pending trade, which is still ongoing. We're going to be talking about another injury. Yikes. And then we're going to be power ranking our favorite Media Day quotes. So what do we think are the most important Media Day quotes that we heard today from VP of Basketball Operations Jeff Peterson, head coach Charles Lee, all the players. And look, we're not going to be talking about all the standard, boring, like copy and paste Media Day answers from years and years of like, we want to be long-term success. We want to play faster. We have to be better defensively. We think we're a playoff team. The chemistry's great. Like, you can copy and paste that stuff every year. We've gone a little bit deeper. We're trying to find the stuff that maybe isn't the headline grabbing stuff that you'll get straight away, but is the most important stuff that you actually need to be aware of ahead of the upcoming Hornets season. It's always interesting trying to, I guess, edit out the PR fluff versus like the cold information, which is actually useful to take away from this. And I would say it's a pretty mild, tepid Media Day. I'm going like a 5 out of 10. I don't think there was like, whoa, I learned loads today, but I don't think there was nothing at all. It was just kind of felt like a standard Media Day to me. How about you, Sam?
Yeah, like no crazy haircuts,
Yeah.
like no. I mean, I think I saw some new ink maybe on the mellow. I think because I think he got his whole back piece done right in the off season, so we got
That
a
was
little
enough
like
season.
glimpse of that, you know. But from a quotes point of view, yeah, nothing that's going to create bulletin board material for other teams or really shake things up. I think there's one thread you could possibly pull at from Josh Green
Oh,
when he was
tease
talking about the
it.
Mavericks. Maybe we'll get to that.
Mm.
We'll get to that. I'm willing to start things up because I don't care about the Mavericks. So we can get into that later. But yeah, it's been pretty like straightforward. And I think if you're a Hornets PR or associated with the team, it's a 10 out of 10 for you because nothing went crazy. But for the consumption of the public, it's about middle of the road.
Yeah. Okay, let's get up here. First with this reported trade. It's September and the Hornets have made a trade. What is going on? This is I tried to find, for me, this is the first September Hornets trade in history that I could find, at least in the modern era of the franchise. People have probably heard this by now. It first got reported on Friday night that Julius Randle is becoming a New York Knick, is becoming a Minnesota Timberwolf. Sorry. Karl-Anthony Towns is becoming a New York Knick. But the Charlotte's role in this has emerged as a third team was needed because both of those teams are over the first apron, which essentially means there are limitations on what they can do with trades. And one of those limitations is they can't send out more money than they're going to receive. Now, Karl-Anthony Towns makes more money by $8.8 million than Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo combined, which means for the Knicks to make this trade, they need to send out $8.8 million in salary somewhere, either to Minnesota or elsewhere. In this situation, it's going to be Charlotte. Now, what the Hornets get for that and how the Knicks get to that $8.8 million, we can probably get into some of the detail. Some of it is still unclear. But what is notable is that the Hornets are being involved in these trades, which in my opinion is exactly what they should be trying to do. And what I've been pushing for this team to do probably since Mitch Kupchak got appointed and it's clear a rebuild was needed, which has kind of started in the post-Kemba Walker era. And for years, I used to sit around, used to see Oklahoma City, Houston, Philadelphia. They take part in these moves and you look at the Hornets roster and go, why didn't Charlotte do that? Why didn't Charlotte be the team to take on a bad contract and to get some draft picks? And finally, the Hornets are acting like a good rebuilding team should and jumping opportunities. So I'm interested to see how this plays out. But Sam, what are your reactions of the trade about what we know so far, which isn't that much?
Right. One of my best friends is a Knicks fan, so I sent him a "You're welcome" text because you don't get your boy unless we're involved. I love that Charlotte, even with the Josh Green deal, like of the historic Klay Thompson leaving the Golden State Warriors, and you have the Hornets involved in that. Like the little wrinkle, you've yet to see like the full payout for some of these like really savvy moves. But Jeff Peterson keeps mentioning the phrase strategic and opportunistic, and I've been loving it every time he says it. It's one of those things you could, as a fan, as an outsider, you can draw a direct line between the GM's words and the actions, because it's been reinforced every opportunity that they've been able to get involved with something. Hey, we got some space. Hey guys, we'll take some picks and some contracts and make it work, and we'll be rolling. And they're able to do that because they made some really smart decisions with how the cap has been balanced out thus far, right? Long are the days where we've been waiting for Batum to be expiring and then stretched out. It's like the large contracts, the dead cap space, that era of Hornets basketball seems to be a thing of the past. And hopefully as we move forward, we can look forward to a front office that's continuing to be strategic and continuing to be opportunistic.
You're absolutely spot on. And that was not long ago, right? The
Mhm.
Batum, I know we were having to deal with that.
They're finally
I
off the
want to,
books. This is insane.
yeah, I want to give credit to, I think, the relationships that Jeff Peterson has brought into this. Like, we know it's relationships business, relationships with other front offices. There are other teams who probably could have taken on Reggie Jackson, for 3 second-round picks. There are other teams who probably could have done this deal, could have been that third team, could have been that fourth team. But the Charlotte Hornets now seem to be the team getting in there. That's the team that other people are calling to have the conversation. I don't know if Mitch Kupchak's still there. Do you think the Knicks are calling up Charlotte Hornets first on the list and saying, hey, Mitch, can you help us out? We need a third team to facilitate. I just don't believe he showed. Yeah, I just don't believe that's going to be happening. So it's definitely a sign of proactiveness and a positive sign for relationship building going forwards. And this team needs to be proactive. You can't just sit back and wait, which is kind of Mitch Kupchak's approach a lot of the time. And like everyone else is doing so many things, you need to be moving quickly as well. And the Hornets finally appear to be doing so.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And I'm not to jump ahead too far, but when Peterson talks about the layout, the roadmap for the team, it all fits. Like you can't be win now and strategic and opportunistic. Like everything he says is within the same viewpoint. And I love it. There's a clear direction here going on. And I think it's eventually going to work, right? Who knows how long it'll take to get to where you want to be as a playoff team and a contender and all that stuff. That's a long, long road ahead. But it seems like they've taken the right path here.
Yeah. And people will probably be listening to this going, well, what are the Hornets going to get back for this? And it's always hard to say, but let's put this in a little bit of perspective. The Hornets got 3 second-round picks for taking on Reggie Jackson's 1 year, like $5.2 million contract. Well, this is at a time of year where it's probably harder to make the move, so you'd think the value should be more. And you're probably going to be taking on $8.8 million or so, which is more money. So I think you can kind of use that Josh Green trade, in my opinion, as a benchmark. Like, if it was less than 3 seconds, like I think I'd probably be a little bit disappointed. And that sounds quite a lot when I say it out loud. But again, just using that as a benchmark, I think it has to be 3 or maybe 2 really good ones. Or like maybe we get crazy. Like maybe this is like I think the Knicks own like a fake first, like because it's a first round pick from the Wizards, but it's got a bit of protection, so it probably won't ever be a first. Maybe it's something like that. But either way, I'm interested to see what they get here. They're obviously still looking to build draft pick capital for the future, which I still like that approach. Like that 15th roster spot or whatever it's going to be, they might even end up getting waived, whoever this gets signed and traded. And there could be 2 or 3 players getting signed and traded to Charlotte because there's all sorts of intricacies with the salary cap, which I'm not going to get into, but it makes it more difficult for them just to send over any players currently in our team. Precious Achua can't be traded till late October. Mitchell Robinson earns too much money to be traded. So they're probably going to sign and trade their own free agents who were on the team towards the end of last year. So that's Daquan Jeffries, Charlie Brown Jr., like Dwayne Washington Jr. They're probably going to sign and trade those guys to Charlotte. I don't expect any of them probably to stick on the roster. I think they will come and they will probably be waived almost immediately. And then the Hornets will kind of like move on back with the real world, moving on with everything that's happening. That's how I kind of expect it to go. When that gets agreed and negotiated, I think it'll be later this week. I wrote an article today on Hornets on SI. You can go find out where I kind of laid out some more of the intricacy of the details that I don't want to get all into in this podcast because that's a deep rabbit hole. But you can go read it on SI if you want, in terms of, it's called, I think, the reason why the Hornets trade is still pending or something of that nature. So interested to see what the return is to get draft capital at this point of the season for taking on dead money for the 15th roster spot. If anything, it confirms what we've talked about before, that this is a rebuilding year. This is not a front office fighting tooth and nail for the playoffs. And I'm okay with that. I think they're okay with that. The players are maybe less so because a lot of them talk about the playoffs, but every single player and every single team in the NBA will be doing that on media day.
Right. And just to add to what you just mentioned, the Hornets are probably not going to make the playoffs, which means they'll keep the first round pick. Yeah. And then next year, they're going to lose 2 second rounders. I think to San Antonio, who owns the 21 pick? I think San Antonio does now. It's been passed around a lot.
I believe it's now San Antonio.
So anytime they can to accumulate second rounders will help them be more whole after they potentially, most likely, forfeit up 2 second rounders thanks to the Kai Jones trade.
Yes. And I remember I recorded a podcast on the night the Kai Jones trade was made. And I remember with Chase, I said, what a great trade, right? And if it doesn't work out, then Kai Jones probably busts. And like if this team doesn't make the playoffs at some point in the next 3 or 4 years, then some serious shit has gone wrong, is what we said that night. And fast forward, and holy hell has some shit gone wrong. So we were right on the money with that time. That was after we were coming off the play-in tournaments. Yeah. The LaMelo's looking young and upside. You're thinking, how can this possibly go that far backwards in the next 3 years? And it absolutely did. So
I had real quick tangent. I was at the Panthers game on Sunday against the Bengals, and one of the Bengals players, Jamar Chase, after he caught a pass, got tackled, and did a kip. I
saw it.
Like he did. So he did a kip up, like straight up to his feet, and it gave me flashbacks to Kai Jones doing that summer league. Like when he got to the ground, him doing, or maybe it wasn't summer league, might have been when during the actual season. But I was like, oh my goodness, I just had like a weird, like full on like time vortex moment thinking about Kai Jones and how excited I was about his potential. The story on him is done in Charlotte, but we'll see what happens to what the rest of his career. But no, it was weird. Jamar Chase reminded me of Kai Jones in that random moment, and I didn't like it. I didn't like what it did to me.
All right. Well, we'll probably dive into a little bit more detail on that trade when we have the full details. Again, super intriguing for them to make a deal right now. Let's move on to our next part. Probably less of a positive news story here. Mark Williams has a left foot sprain. He is going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks. That does not mean he will be back in 2 weeks. It means he's going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks. He spoke about it a little bit today at Media Day. I think he seems to be kind of pretty defiant that it's not a serious injury and it's precautionary, and that he's not worried about missing too much time. But like, I can understand it, right? Fans are nervous. They just missed him for, they were told it was going to be day to day back around Christmas last year for the back. It turned into being week to week, and then we never saw him again. So like, I can understand why fans are nervous and worried about it. The number one goal for training camp, and I said it for the last 2 years in a row, is just for everybody to stay healthy. Like, that's basically everything you hope for. And you've already lost your starting center. He's going to be a key part, probably your best defensive player in your starting unit. You've just lost for a team that was already defensively challenged. How big of an impact do you expect this to have on the Hornets season?
on the season itself, I want to believe Mark Williams and the staff and say it won't impact things, that he'll be back and involved. It sucks he's missing training camp. Hopefully, it doesn't bleed too far into preseason, and we can expect him to be ready to go on night one. Just because he seemed so sure of it being like he really downplayed it
He did.
during media day, right? And so it also, but he also didn't really explain what happened, and that is more concerning to me. Like someone asked him, and he's like, "I don't want to get into it. I don't want to like go back to that place and relive it." I'm like, "What? Did you step on someone's foot or not? Like what happened?" That is very weird. But other than that, I think it's something that Hornets fans are rightful to be concerned about. Like I get it, fans can be fans in that regard, but I'm choosing to believe it's more nothing than something. But real quick, I was at a birthday party over the weekend, and I was talking to somebody who's a big Duke fan, and he told me that, and a Hornets fan, and he was saying that he purchased a ton of his words, ton of Mark Williams rookie cards.
Oh,
and so I was like, "Oh yeah."
Oh no.
It's like, did you hear about it sucks he's hurt again? He's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, he's in the walking. He's in the walking boot." It's like, I had no idea. That's so for his sake and for everybody else's sake, I hope it's nothing and everything works out.
No, I recall the exact same moment in the interview where he kind of paused and you saw him thinking, saying, "Do I really want to take this reporter through the step-by-step like process of how I injured the foot, or do I just want to like give an answer where I could deflect and don't answer it directly?" And he basically opted for the latter and said, I don't want to go back and live through that moment again. Again, you're right. He seemed very defiant. I also noted, and again, this is like just another little thing, that Jeff Peterson was asked about Mark Williams. He called it a minor setback, but he's still excited for him, and said, fortunately, it's not anything major. But Jeff Peterson really stumbled around the words for like talking about Mark Williams and the injury in his press conference. And I know for me, if I'm stumbling what I'm talking about, it's because I'm trying to not say the wrong thing, because I know in my head, like if I speak my complete honest truth mind, it will get me in trouble. And I'm like trying to self-filter what I'm saying as I'm talking. Mm-hmm. And then you start using other words and things don't quite knit together as neatly when you're presenting your argument, your discussion. And it's just something that it was the only time the whole time that I felt Jeff Peterson kind of like stumbled or like babbled or kind of like lost himself and refound himself in the whole of his media availability was when talking about Mark. So again, it was just something that I just noted. And again, like with you, I'm hoping that he'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks. He'll be able to work his way back and he'll be in the lineup opening night. But yeah, it is a concern. Do you think Nick Richards is next man up here? Do you think there's even any possibility of anyone else stepping into that starting role for preseason?
Maybe Grant Williams, just to get a look to see what you have there. Because again, I don't want to jump ahead too far ahead with the media day stuff, but hearing Grant Williams talk is like, how can you not have this guy to maximize this guy's minutes around this group of players? You know, so I think it's going to be Nick Richards' job, and then depending on the night, maybe get away with Grant Williams. But yeah, I think Nick will go back to what he did last year, and Mark Williams cleanup duty.
I agree. I think that's how it'll work out. I think Grant might close games even at the end, again, depending on matchups. Not in the preseason because they won't do a matchup base, but if it was to carry into the regular season, you know who? Can you name the one person who is probably happy with the Mark Williams news? Name the one person in Charlotte right now.
Taj Gibson.
I was going to say Harry Giles. Maybe there's two people.
That's going on.
There's two people. A better one. I think two people who are really happy right now. Well, not really happy, but I'll probably go, "Oh, that's terrible, Mark. I'm so sad to hear that news." You know, depending how this trade works out with the Knicks and if there's a roster spot available or not, Harry Giles probably got a more of a downhill slope to make the roster now, right? He's going to have probably more chance playing rotation minutes in preseason, probably be matched more up in scrimmages and training camps more so than he would have been before. So good news for Harry Giles. Bad news for basically everybody else apart from maybe Taj Gibson.
Right. Get well soon, Mark. Get well soon.
Please, Mark, get well soon. Come back. Stay healthy. Right, that's it, I think, for Mark Williams' injury. Let's move on to our main part of the podcast.
Let's do it.
Media Day.
Yeah.
We are going to power rank our top quotes of Media Day. We're going to go back and forth, picking the ones that we feel are most impactful, most interesting, the biggest things we learned. Sam, I will give you the first pick on our power ranking. Fire away. What do you think was the biggest quote of Media Day?
Oh man. Okay. I want to give you, man, it's tough. I have like 3 I want to choose from. One from Jeff Peterson, one from Charles Lee, and one from Grant Williams. And I'm gonna go with Grant. I'm gonna back the Charlotte guy because it's what as someone who's been making content about the Hornets for 5 years now, is what I've been saying. And I think what fans have been feeling and saying, and he said the quiet part out loud. And who knows what will happen? It's big talk, but he says, we better go out and compete with our hardest effort possible. In years past, people have said they have talent, but do they play hard every night? Do they defend? Do they care? That's something they shouldn't say about us anymore. And I think that is like, you could put that on basically any team in Charlotte basketball recent history, and that there's been talent around, but you see him maybe start off slowly or come out quiet in the second half, just not finishing games, or just look disinterested, get punched in the mouth and don't respond. And it seems like you look at the bench, you look at the body language, that there's a disconnect, right? We've seen multiple coaches come through, different players come through, and it still kind of feels the same. And when you talk about Hornets DNA and what has been going on recently, what Grant said and how he put it in that kind of mission statement that I hope carries them throughout this year and then beyond, kind of sums up how I've been feeling about the Hornets for the last few years, especially. So I love that he said it, and I hope they act on it.
I've been saying the exact same thing, as long-time listeners to the podcast will know. It's good to see we were aligned, even though we weren't putting it together at the time. This team has lacked toughness, consistency, and effort, and it's been a real concern. And like, Grant was on the teams last few years. Like, Grant is telling you exactly what they've talked about in the locker rooms. Like, these guys are talented, but like, as long as we get up 10 or 15, or as long as we punch them in the mouth at some point, they're probably not going to like punch back. And that's been the MO for the Charlotte Hornets for so long. And like you say, we've all witnessed it. I'm glad he said it. I think doing something about it is going to be the key thing here. I think they've got more veteran players, probably better suited to do it now. But we talked last year. Last year's roster, I think, was the most talented Charlotte Hornets roster in the modern era of Hornets basketball. The most talented, not the best, right? Even without the injuries, I don't think ever would have been the best. I think the playoff teams, the 40+ win teams of yesteryear, they were better teams. They weren't more talented. Like, if you look at like PJ Washington, Terry Rozier, those guys aren't even on the team anymore. They're on last year's team. PJ Washington started in the NBA Finals. He was coming off the bench for the Charlotte Hornets. Talent was not the issue. They lacked leadership, toughness, energy every single night. It's something that Charles Lee talked about as well today. Was like, you can't just choose to do it for a quarter or for a half or for a month. You need to do it every single night. You need to be able to turn up to a cold night in February when it's snowing and do it. And that is the definition of what the Hornets have lacked. They've lacked the grit. They've lacked it so much. And Grant Williams doesn't do a lot of things. One thing he does do is probably play with a little bit of an edge. People may say it's corny, but like, we watched the end of last season. We know the kind of things that Grant Williams was doing towards the end of last year when he got kicked out of games. He was starting things. Like, other non-Hornets fans are laughing at that, whereas hardcore people who watch the team, who analyze the team, are going, shit, this team's been needing that for 4 years. And that's why that quote means so much.
And I don't have another Grant Williams quote. I just want to mention that he's going to make it a point, or just talked about passing on what he learned from other veterans, like Bobcats legend Al Jefferson. Full circle.
Mm-hmm.
From his time in Boston when he was a young fella. And so I love that, right? Again, we'll see what happens. But hearing Grant talk, it just got me thinking, like, man, this guy, I don't know what he wants to do post basketball, but I think he's going to exceed and have success in whatever he chooses to do post basketball. The way he carries himself is super professional, and I hope it rubs off on everybody else on the team.
And this is probably will have me point out, I think you probably meant Al Horford, not Al Jefferson. Because he said Big Al from Boston.
You're right.
He's talking about Al Horford, not Al Jefferson. Because I was thinking, Al Jefferson didn't play in Boston. Like, when did Grant Williams play with him? And he'll have been talking about Big Al as in Big Al Horford, not Big Al Jefferson. But I understand what you did there. Because but I have to listeners. Some people would have tweeted us that and being like, "What? Big Al playing with Grant Williams?" So I had to set the record straight there.
My bad. I was thinking because like that 08 or well, an
even better
Al
example
Jefferson was in the Kevin Garnett deal. That's what it was.
He was way back. Yeah. But and even like Al Horford, an even better vet for your point, right? So like one of the most respected guys in the entire NBA for the last decade. So still rings home. Okay, my number one quote, Miles Bridges, which he had a few interesting things to say. He's always a good talker, Miles. Someone asked him about what he is expecting from himself this year after having a career year last year. And I really like the maturity in this quote. He said that he expects Brandon Miller will be the main scorers of the Hornets and that he will take on a more complementary role, more focusing on being a playmaker. And for me, this was one of the big questions of the season, right? Did Miles Bridges come into this year going, I put up 27 points per game last year. Like, I'm the number 2 with LaMelo. It's me and LaMelo's team. Brandon Miller, you're a good young guy, but you're not the guy. Mm-hmm. And, like, how is this team going to feed Ball, Miller, Bridges? There's nothing more toxic to a team than when some guy wants more shots and shouldn't be getting them than better players. That's the kind of thing that really leads to issues. And for Miles Bridges to basically say, like, I'm focusing on my defense, I want to be more of a playmaker, and I want to get them more shots. That, to me, is how you get the most out of this team. And the NBA has a lot of egos, right? Miles Bridges came off last year. It'd be understandable. Like, in our world, it's easy as analysts. But in his world, to go, I'm now taking the back seat behind 2 guys after I was, like, the primary option for basically half of last season. But he's willing to do that. And I just think that makes the chemistry, it makes the runway for Miller and Ball to have great years that much easier. And I think that's the most important thing for this team. So that's why I've picked the Miles Bridges quote.
No, I think it's a good one. I didn't get a chance to listen to the Bridges one. I kind of was at the mercy of the Hornets YouTube uploads, and I didn't have time to get to all of them. Like, I think I left the Seth Curry one early. You know what I'm saying? No, respectfully, of course. Brandon Miller, though, talked about how Bridges is like a brother to him. And when you hear guys talk about Bridges as a teammate, like it's only positive. And what you just mentioned, what Bridges said, fits into that mold, right? If LaMelo and Brandon Miller are putting up shots and putting up numbers, that's only going to help Bridges and everybody else out too, right? Like Miles Bridges is gonna get better looks if LaMelo and Brandon Miller are threat 1 and threat 2, right? It's only gonna lift everybody up. So no, I think that's really well put. And I think he has the track record as a contributor to really like back it up. Because we've seen him come off the bench, we've seen him as a starter, we've seen him play multiple positions. Like we've seen him sacrifice before, right?
And so that I want to say that was the best season of Miles Bridges' career was when he was coming off the bench. When he was coming off the bench, he was playing in the headband, and he focused on like rebounding, defense, and energy, bringing that to the game. And the scoring was there, but all of a sudden it was like a different Miles Bridges on the defensive end, and that came, and then it had gone by the next season when he was basically the starter because he played so well off the bench. Mm-hmm. But if he can tap into that version of Miles Bridges again, that's what this team needs, not 20-point per game score Miles Bridges. And he seems to be self-aware and mature enough to know that. And not everybody always is.
Right. Right, and that's the secret of basketball, man. It's a sacrifice. There's only one ball,
Absolutely.
and you got to give something up to get something back.
Okay. Quote number 3, Sam, over to you.
Okay, this is not going to be a direct quote. I'm gonna summarize something that Josh Green had to say because I find it. You ever work someplace where you end up hiring somebody from a competitor or someone else in a similar business, and they're very successful, and they come over to your company who is fine, but as a way to go to be at like the industry standard, and they come in and they're like, oh, you guys do things this way and think things are here, you can change this, we do this there. So like I wanted to hear what Josh Green had to say about going from an NBA final team to the Charlotte Hornets, right? Like what it's a very stark difference between what's going on in Dallas and Charlotte, right? And for him to say that he was impressed by the commitment from the fellas on this team to have everyone report by like early September. And he's like, I've never seen that before. He's only played for one team.
Grant Williams said the same thing, by the way.
Yeah.
Grant Williams made the same point as well, saying in his teams in Boston and Dallas, they didn't have everyone in market early.
So I love that. We saw glimpses of it in Summer League, like great Hornets presence right throughout Summer League. And then even the NBA Finals. And then now, like you see it and you hope that continuity, the chemistry building, all that is laying a foundation for something special going forward. And I do find it interesting that he kind of stopped himself from like going too deep into what was going on in Dallas specifically. But for them it was probably because they're deep in the playoffs, so maybe some of those teams, those guys wanted a little more extra time off. But for the Hornets, you haven't been playing basketball in a long time, so I love that these boys are got back involved, working on defense, hammering it home with the freshman head coach. Like all of it sounds like all the actions and the words seem to be linking up, which I'm here for.
The only concern I guess I have, it's not a concern. No, what you said there is absolutely right, and it can only help. We have seen the last couple of years the same thing. Remember, we had Hornets in Miami when Terry Rozier flew everyone out and did like a mini training camp. Everyone always seems to be back earlier and earlier every summer. And the last 2 years, that just hasn't translated to the basketball court. But I agree, like, it doesn't mean that you stop doing that.
Right.
You're still giving yourself every chance. And you can tell with Grant Williams, Josh Green, new guys to the team, like it made an impression on them. They weren't asked specifically, oh, was everyone back early this year? Like they chose to bring that up in the course of their answers because it's clearly something they've noticed and they wanted to tell the media like, hey, this is good. So absolutely, definitely promising, especially with a lot of new faces on the team, right? To get used to playing with each other more.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and just building that continuity with the coaching staff. Like it's a lot of everyone's new, so getting in there early, it's only a good thing for now. We'll see what happens, but I'm here for it.
Yeah. Okay, my next one. It's also not a direct quote, but it's almost like again summarizing what multiple people said. Seems to be a lot of love out there for the Hornets' new training staff, both in the weight room, the dietitians, the physios, the guy, whoever is doing all the health, the rehab stuff. Multiple people mentioned them. You've got LaMelo Ball now wearing ankle braces. They found some braces that work and that he's happy with, so they're going to try them. That's a good start. I'm not a big ankle brace guy, but I know it's a thing that a lot of people like. But that's positive, right? They found a resolution to the impasse they came to last year. Miles Bridges said he got his explosiveness back. Someone asked him, what does he put that down to? He said the training staff here, the diet, they put him on, the lifting he's been doing. He feels like in the best shape he's ever felt going into the season. Again, another nod to them. You had Mark Williams, who said, and I quote, this is very early on, I trust our new training staff completely. Okay? Didn't just say just the training staff completely. I trust our new training staff completely. And I guess this is something I'll open. I guess I'll share this little bit of insight that I know now, and I wish I knew at the time. Obviously, we all remember in previous years where there's been issues with Gordon Hayward's wife going on social media and guys playing hurt, coming back, getting hurt again. Cody Martin kind of being in and out the lineup, being unavailable. What I've learned now, and again, I wish I had this at the time to share. I wasn't holding it back. I only found this out because people talk about these things when they're in the past a bit more. They're a bit more detached. There's been a distrust between the Charlotte Hornets' old training staff and the players. The players had lost faith. I'm not saying what the training staff were doing was right or wrong, but however they managed the situation between the players and the training staff, they just lost faith in that they were putting them in the best scenario. And that's where you had people doubting the advice coming from the training staff. Now, I'm not saying it was wrong or right, but the problem is if you're an athlete and you've got doubt, it doesn't matter what you're being told. Like, it's going to be in the back of your mind. And that's why you'll have seen the entire new training staff get brought in over the summer. And a lot of nods to it today by, say, multiple players. Joe Charles Lee and Jeff Peterson mentioned about it as well. So I think we all say that staying healthy is the biggest thing for this team. This new training staff is going to be a key part of that. And this is their big first test. Mark Williams, their first test, right? Reevaluate in 2 weeks. I've marked on my calendar when 2 weeks happens. Are you going to give us an update in 2 weeks, Charlotte Hornets training?
Because that's another part of it too, right?
That's the communication part. It's not the treatment part. It's the communication part.
Yeah.
It then makes everyone think that you're just not doing your job properly when you don't communicate it.
Yeah, and specific to that, like when you have promo nights coming up and LaMelo Ball is on promotional material and there's no word on when he's going to return from injury, it's like, are you just putting LaMelo on? Like, here's LaMelo Ball, buy tickets now, when he's probably not going to play because we haven't heard anything otherwise. So that, to your point, is something I hope changes as well with this new regime. So
this is your first test. New training staff, comms, whatever you are, whoever leads on this is your first test. And yeah, if the confidence is back in the training staff, then they're going to engage with them more. They're going to go to more rehab sessions. They're going to take their word. They're going to trust them. And that can only mean good things.
Yeah. I like it. I just want to like piggyback off that. No pun intended. With the back stuff. But Charles Lee said that, Mark has showed a newfound love and commitment and joy for the game this summer, battling back from injury. And I'm curious, like, we didn't get much into it, like what the opposite looked like how he was, where his mindset was from not playing. Like, did he, is newfound love just a saying or a cliche that he threw out there, or did he seriously like resent the game? I'm curious about that. But what I loved that I heard was that he was watching a lot of film and he was staying engaged mentally when he was out. He also mentioned that he was doing a lot of core stuff, to stay in shape and work on what he could work on with the injury. But watching a lot of Brook Lopez tape from Milwaukee, just shot blocking film, that is encouraging to hear, that he's keeping his mind sharp, that he's working on his anticipation and timing, because the Hornets are going to need him, like really, really need him to protect the rim once he's back and available and all that stuff. So I don't have a direct quote for both of them because I think it was Charles Lee and Mark kind of talked about it in each session. But just to put a bow on at least my takeaways from the Mark Williams media day experience, because I think honestly, he's the biggest storyline from an individual player point of view. I think.
Yeah, I think so. I agree.
From media day. So
not for great reasons, unfortunately, but because he's an injured player and he's someone who's dealt with those injuries. And to kind of add to yours, because it's kind of related, one thing that was interesting is that the back injury is non-existent. That was his exact quote. Someone said like, "Oh, is it like, are you still ongoing pain management, managing it?" And he's like, "My back? No, non-existent." He was like shaking his head like, not a thing, like completely dismissed it.
Love it.
And he said that he was playing 5-on-5 all summer. And if anyone who knows the NBA and been following it long enough, teams don't let you play 5-on-5 if they're worried about you being hurt still. So if he's been playing 5-on-5 in the summer, that means he's fully cleared. This isn't like, if you remember last year, LaMelo Ball came into training camp, had not been cleared to play 5-on-5 before training camp. The team were worried about his foot still after the surgery. It's not been the case for Mark Williams. So I think that's also good news. It's interesting he's up to 260 pounds. He was 242 pounds on draft night. He is now up 18 pounds in 3 years. I guess some of that's probably just naturally maturing, but for someone who has back issues to put on weight, that's not normally what you do. So that's interesting, but he did need to get stronger. So I think jury will be out. If he gets another back injury again, people say, what's he doing putting on weight? When you're getting back injuries, you normally cut weight. Right. But if he puts that to good use, that strength, that bulk, and he's able to stay healthy, then it's good weight. We will basically judge up based off the result because we don't really know the process.
Right, exactly. I have one more, like, just quick one, and just something to monitor, because again, we don't know how the stuff will play out. But Jeff Peterson said that Nick Smith Jr. was at the facility more than anyone. And
you might have also said the same thing about Trey Mann, because I've got my quotes.
Is he like doing that? Okay.
He definitely said about Trey Mann, because I have it in one of my quotes here. Where is it? Trey is here more than anyone. So maybe he's getting Trey Mann and Nick Smith. They're a little similar. Maybe he's getting them confused. Maybe. He's like, God, Nick Smith's been here a lot. It's just
gotta check the badging, like the fob access records to see who's in the building.
All right, my next one. This is a pretty simple one to do. It's Jeff Peterson on LaMelo Ball. Say LaMelo is in a great place from a health standpoint. That's a fantastic thing to hear. Music to our ears. He stayed in Charlotte the whole summer. He's put in the time. Related to that, Josh Green. Again, interesting. He didn't have to say this, Josh Green. He wasn't asked about LaMelo specifically about, like, how's he been this summer. He said that he called LaMelo Ball dedicated. He's shown that he's been dedicated. And he said he's also competitive, and it's clear that he wants to win. I would say LaMelo Ball's dedication and competitive spirit has probably been questioned at times by this fan base, by especially national media.
Yeah.
You kind of view him as a happy-go-lucky, go out there and play globetrot basketball. Like, does he really work hard? Does he really care? And I think to hear that he's been, like I say, not on a Puma tour all summer, he's been in Charlotte working out. To see that Josh Green has already, been impressed with his approach, I think that's a really positive sign. And I don't think it's something that we should take for granted. Now, Charles Lee did say that he wants his, he was trying to say it in a really nice way. He had an interesting terminology that he used. But basically, he wants a little bit more grit from LaMelo, a little bit more, that's what Charles Lee wants from him. But the dedication and the time doesn't seem to be an issue. And that has been something that's been a worry, I think, in recent years.
Yeah. A few people brought up that, I think it was Jeff and Charles, the emphasis on defense, which again has been a thing that they are not the first people to say that. In those seats, we've heard the previous GM and previous coaches say those things, and it's like, all right, good thought. Let's see it pan out, or play out. And I think Charles talked about defense only practices. Is that new? I don't know. Maybe it work. Maybe it won't work. We'll see. But
great podcasting content to talk about defense only practices, isn't it? Right? It's the kind of thing that everyone writes that down.
For it though. He's very excited. He brought it up. He was like very excited about just blocking shots. But the key, like you mentioned, that LaMelo has had a full off season, unlike he did last year, and we'll see the results of it. Jeff said something else about LaMelo that I wanted to get into.
About his defense? Or?
Yeah, it was defense, and on the other side, it was Charles Lee. Says he talked about focusing on playing winning basketball, right? So it is both ends. LaMelo's like a really fun and exciting player. He's an all-star. I think he has all-NBA potential, right? But getting to that point is gonna have to check a few boxes to get there, right? Along with staying healthy, obviously. So I love that they're not just sitting back and like we got a star in the league and we're good, we're off and running. That they're staying on him. He's still a very young player going into year 5, and they have an opportunity to mold him into something that could be really special.
Yeah, it's pretty clear reading between the sublines, they have challenged LaMelo Ball to be better defensively. Like, that is his number one goal. They didn't talk about anything on offense about LaMelo Ball. They didn't talk about his 3-point shot, getting to the rim more, getting to the free throw line. The only thing they talked about LaMelo was his defense, including even like his teammates, Miles Bridges. I think Bridges said that LaMelo's coach is like as a assigned assistant coach. When other guys are doing shooting drills in practice, LaMelo's assigned coach is doing defensive drills, like sliding. So you can imagine everyone's like doing like 3-point shots, warming up, and LaMelo's out there doing like slides and staying with the ball. It's pretty clear that they've, in a probably a more blunt way than they said it to the media, said, Melo, you need to fucking lock in this year. Like, we are not letting you get away with some of the relaxed shit that went on last year. And I will say, like, there were moments last year, and this comes back to what Chelsea said. There were moments, and I've clipped them on my social media. I can go find the videos and X. Well, LaMelo Ball did look engaged and did look active and did look high effort. It just wasn't for 48 minutes. It wasn't for 5 games in a row. And that's what he needs to do. It's not just when they're playing well and it's a close game, but you need to do it for a full 48 minutes.
And LaMelo said it as well. Like, someone asked him about what do you need to do better defensively. He's like, stay locked in or stay focused. Like, I'm glad that you hear it coming from his mouth. And again, we'll see how it plays out. Is it something or nothing that Jeff Peterson was very non-committal about Tajon Salah? Or as expected? Because he said he's a hard worker, it'll take him some time, and he's just really non-committal about how he'll be used or what his expectations are for him.
I think as expected. I think I don't think they're expecting anything from Tajon this year. He did say it would take some time. I believe Jeff Peterson said that, and he said that before. I think they just basically want to keep Tajon out of every spotlight possible and just let him adjust to like being in this country.
Yeah.
Like moving across the world to play basketball as an 18-year-old, the youngest player in the NBA on a fully guaranteed contract. I think this is an adjustment year. This is learning as we go. I don't think they expect anything. And I don't think Peterson wants to give out a quote to raise expectation.
Right. Because the best bar of Media Day, and I don't know if it was intentional or if he was workshopping this, but it's a good line. Peterson said it's a competitive group on the floor every night. They take pride in player development, and they don't care if it's Tajon or Taj. There's something they can get better at. We can all get better. I like it. You got the Tajon to Taj line. I like it. I like it, Jeff.
Stick on a t-shirt. Maybe we will. Is it me or you? I've lost track. Where are we up to?
I have a bunch of like smaller ones, so you can go if you have a more meaty quote.
I'll go. Okay, I'll go. I got a Trey Mann one. Jeff Peterson on Trey Mann said he's had some good moments at the end of last year filling in for Melo. And he said, quote, Trey's here more than anyone and has taken another step in his game with his shot making and ability to create this offseason. This was the only player where I would say Jeff Peterson kind of singled out to say, like, he has got better this offseason. You're going to see it. He didn't do that with anyone else. He said everyone else, like, he's a good Summers and gave all like the standard stuff. Trey Mann was the guy where he was like, no, this guy I want to praise because he's been incredible. And, you know, he was already a good shooter, but like, what is a jump, another step in his shot making and ability to create? Sounds like a very useful player if he's going to be even more so than he was last year. And I think he was already effective.
In a contract year. This is last year of his rookie deal. And if you're Trey's agent, you should be like paying attention to everything the front office says about Trey, because you can use that this summer.
But they can extend him before October 21st. They can extend Trey Mann. And the way Jeff Peterson, I did not think an extension would get done because I was like, there's just too much of the competition. It's too murky. But if he if he's been like the guy who's been in the building just as much as anyone, maybe apart from Nick Smith, according to other quotes in the day, and he has a good start to the year, then maybe they will want to try and lock him up if they just like believe in him like so much. But the Hornets bench unit has not been good in many years. Having a classic kind of scoring, passing sixth man creator off the bench could be very valuable for this team.
Yeah, and you're talking about a backcourt that's under 25, like 25 and under. That's really good. Like that's where you want to be, right? Like you're talking long-term future and building something. Having Trey, LaMelo, Josh Green, Brandon Miller, all under 25 years old as pieces to choose from, Nick Smith Jr., pieces to choose from, it's a good place to be. I just would be like a little hesitant to pay anybody before you have to. You could, well, as long as you got the rights to them, I wouldn't hate it if they waited just to see.
Look, I'm there with you. I still wouldn't do it, but remember, we have to remember these guys have seen a lot more than we have, right? And if you've seen it firsthand and you're not like projecting it like we are at the minute, it's just words on a page. It's not real life for us. Maybe it's different because you're thinking, oh, we can get value now. Whereas if we let him play 82 games and everyone sees what he does, then he's X amount of money more expensive. So it's always the risk and reward. And
it could also be another vote of confidence in the training staff if you're willing to pay him before you actually have to pay him. Because we've seen it go the other way too. You pay a guy and then they stop showing up to work.
Yeah. All right, you go with some of your smaller ones. I only got a couple left here, so we'll round it out here.
Okay. I mean, just Jeff Peterson on Brandon Miller, the need to be more physical and to be physical, and to maybe consider shooting more threes, to maybe like step out a little further. I know he loves the mid range. He's great at it, but for opportunities to get better. And then Brandon himself says becoming that elite two-way player. Just something to be mindful of. Think they're all saying the right things.
That was his goal for the season. Like, what the next step for Brandon Miller look like? And he said elite two-way, basically. Is in like he said. I think he said, I was a two-way player for basically parts of last year, but I want to be all of this year. And actually, that matches exactly my eye test of last year, where I thought at the start of the year when Brandon Miller came off the bench, I thought he was really good defensively. Like for the first 10, 15 games. Then he was starting. Then he was like a primary offensive option, and the defense kind of just became like blah, you're just out there. It just didn't jump off the page anymore, whereas it did early. So I do agree with him. That is something for an area for him that he's shown the ability to do it. Again, it's just doing it every single night, which he hasn't shown yet.
Yeah, he spoke very highly of his Team USA experience. And he says he's looking forward to being a young leader in partnership with the more experienced players. So again, like Brandon like nailed it as far as like second year player in front of the media. Like I'm no notes. Like I'm happy with how he presented himself and what he had to say.
Yeah. Okay, my last couple, again, it's a couple of small ones. Steph Curry on LaMelo Ball. Someone asked him, like, what have you seen from LaMelo since being here? What does LaMelo Ball need to do to take the next step? Classic. How many next steps do we get in media day? Like
there's an endless amount of steps. There's always another.
There's endless steps. He gave like a bunch of kind of like preamble of, oh, he's been great since I've got here. I've really liked working with him. He's been great to be around. Like all the preamble. Then he got to his like, you can tell what his real answer was. And he said, for LaMelo, he said, and quote, just figuring out who he is as a leader every day in the locker room and on the floor. And that was really Steph Curry's answer to the question when asked, what does he need to do, like, to take him to the next level, next step? And that is something that I know I've talked about before, is a lot of the time, if you're the face of the franchise, you're the best player on the team, that comes normally with a certain level of, like, leadership. And it does not come naturally to LaMelo Ball. You can tell that from seeing him interact, seeing him speak to coaches, speak to media, just knowing his personality, the bit that we've been able to see. He's a great person to put on like a championship team, which is really stressed and really like locked in, because he can come in and like everyone talks about the joy that he brings, that he's like always positive and he just lights up the room as soon as he walks in. that has real value, and that should not go like that should not be missed because everybody says that. But it's that leadership side, especially as like the ball handler, especially as the guy's probably maybe going to take the most shots on the team. You've got to walk the walk at times to pull everyone in your direction because they will follow you. And I think Seth knows that. And he was telling him right there that's what he needed to focus on.
Yeah, and that's like probably the best value out of Seth Curry at this point is imparting that knowledge or just pulling that out of the younger guys on the team. You know, Seth, there's a scenario where Seth is just a knockdown best shooter on the team and can help. This sounds gross to even say it, so respectfully, but like to be the Bertans is the fire off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
That's a real possibility, but I think the real value of him, Taj Gibson, is getting that out of LaMelo. Like when I would do the podcast with Raymond Felton, like he would talk about that all the time, like the value of having a vet to just walk you through the little things, to be that voice, to point out things that you're doing that you may not be aware that you're doing. And that is something that has been missing from LaMelo. And I don't blame him for it because there hasn't really been that real veteran leadership to pull it out of him. Right. Even that has been like a revolving door of guys who haven't maybe not been as locked in as they should be with the situation. Where you have guys like Taj and Seth who are opting in to what's going on here. Like they want to be a part of this and help this locker room out. So I love it. Like I agree. I think it's a good takeaway from today.
And then my final one is just it's one about Josh Green, where someone asked him like, "What's the offseason been like? Change for you?" And he was like, "Poof, not much of an offseason." And he's right. He went to the NBA Finals, the Dallas Mavericks. He then played in the Olympics and the pre-qualifiers and the tournament itself with Australia. And then he moved back to America to move across the country and start playing for the Charlotte Hornets from the Dallas Mavericks. I do think there is some risk, and I've not heard anyone talk about this, and I don't even thought about it until today. There is a little bit of burnout risk with Josh Green here. Like the amount of basketball he's played in the last 9 months and just everything that he's had to, like, I guess, emotionally go through with moving teams, traveling back and forth between America and Australia, just playing a lot of basketball. We can see that take a toll on players, even young players who are in great shape like Josh Green is. And it's just something now that is going to be on my radar. Like it might not happen in October, maybe it happens in February, in March, where we get like cold spell, burnout. He just looks like he's lost his spark, his legs. Something I'm maybe a little bit more concerned about today, which I probably should have thought about this already, but after hearing him talk today, I was like, Jesus, you really haven't had an off season.
Yeah. And then, you know, if you're Nick Smith Jr., if you're Trey Mann, if you're KJ Simpson, I don't know. Like if you're a guard on the team, like that's your opportunity. If that time comes where he needs a rest, give him a night off on a back-to-back or whatever, like there's going to be opportunity for the young guys on the team. Like if there's anyone watching or listening that's concerned about like the new guys coming in and pushing down some of their favorite young players, like everyone's going to get a shot this year. It's just a matter of when. And it's a matter of them making the most of it, because it's one thing to give to be called out and to be given an opportunity to play. That's not in non-garbage time minutes. You got to, when you're out there, you got to play defense. We know that from Charles Lee. Everything he says has been consistent with that. And then if the offensive side of things is there, you'll be in a good position going forward.
Yeah. All right, Sam, that wraps up our Media Day power ranking for quotes. We're gonna get underway here. We're gonna have, by next week we'll have training camp practices in the books. I need to check when is even the first preseason game here. Are we gonna? I think they have a game after like 4 or 5 days. The turnaround in the NBA is freaking ridiculous. Like they literally practice for 4 days. It's like, right, there's your training camp done. Go out and play games. I mean, like Premier League teams have like 3 weeks before they even like think about playing a game. It's crazy. Yeah, we got
the Knicks, our buddies.
First preseason game is basically a week today. So yeah, I don't know if we'll record it before then or not, but we'll definitely have some good training week content to have to find out how people are doing early and what the key themes out of camp. So make sure you tune in and get those updates with us next week. All right, Sam, that's everything from me. Thank you very much for tuning in. Hornet season's on the way. Preseason hoops is a week away, and we'll catch you next week.